Welcome and thank you for attending the 40th annual Martin Luther King event hosted by Seattle Community Colleges. It's my honor to present our MC for the day, and that is Tanya Mosley.
Race matters, but does not. Paradox.
It is about access and opportunity.
What if we're all the same?
Made-up construct, legacy of consequences.
Culturally curious, yet confused about mine.
Cute baby, where is she from?
One white, one brown, same parents.
You're not diverse enough for that.
Created by one God, one people.
Committed to the struggle for justice.
America's obsession, preoccupation, and crazy uncle.
We see what we look for.
Retired, alone, sad, don't like it.
Only 6 words, we are one.
Celebrate our differences and embrace commonality.
An excuse to oppress others.
You're Chinese. You like math, right?
Ethnicity is much deeper than color.
Seattle, please stop fearing black folks.
Submitted by a 6-year-old, we are all best friends forever.
Seek justice, offer forgiveness, be loving.
Biology loves difference. Culture hates it.
Community.
diversity, history, culture, legacy, ignorance.
Resilience, integrity, community, steward, faith, leadership.
Understanding bigotry, moving forward, rejecting prejudice.
I still can't understand the difference.
White by day, black by night.
I was taught to fear others.
Asian, discounted everywhere but HR reports.
LGBTQ people represent the rainbow race.
We need to go forward together.
Never realized I identified as white.
Success with race will define America.
The color of freedom is green.
Is it really in your blood?
Cultural integrity matters, skin color doesn't.
I am only Asian when it's convenient.
Not white Superman complex, just helping.
The heart does not segregate humanity.
My parents said no Mexican boyfriends.
Not a black and white issue.
I am what I am made, Mexican.
Life is too short for hate.
White folks, let's remove the blinders.
Whiteness is invisible until it's you.
Obstacle course meets me every day.
Humanity does not recognize racial differences.
I'm black, therefore, I'm invisible.
Aspire to equality, struggle with assumption.
Race matters, stereotypes happen, must respond.
My inner Asian is fading now.
Race aside, let's return to character.
Korean, Germany, Irish, but first, human.
Your dream, our dream. Thank you.
Learn, feel, reflect. Act, reflect, repeat.
Acknowledging privilege isn't accepting the blame.
Born colorblind, raised to fight injustice.
We can do better than this.
Differences are the most beautiful things.
Don't see color, instead see actions.
Thank you.
Wow.
A round of applause for our young people.
Good morning to you all. My name is Joseth Garcia Scott. I am currently the computer lab assistant for students and currently enrolled in the computer support technician program at Seattle Vocational Institute.
My name is Derek Smith. I go to Seattle Central Community College, studying to become an aeronautical engineer.
My name is Miles Lubin. I am a student at John Stanford International School. I learned Spanish and I am in 5th grade.
My name's Erin Wilson. I'm a North Seattle Community College graduate and now staff member in student leadership and multicultural programs.
Rosie Ramondo Charansap. I'm Vice President of Student Services at South Seattle Community College.
I'm Nasira Swedek. I'm studying computer science and I'm from Tunisia at Seattle Center Community College.
Hi, I'm Kian Warren. I'm from John Stanford International School and I do Japanese and language immersion.
Hi, my name is Josephine Clark. I go to John Stanford International School and I'm learning Spanish.
Hi, my name is Julissa Sanchez, and I'm currently at Seattle Central Community College, transferring to the University of Washington for the Law, Society, and Justice degree with a minor in human rights.
Hi, my name is Mara Williford. I attend North Seattle Community College, and I hope to transfer to the University of Washington and major in women, gender, and sexuality studies. Wow. Thank you.
A round of applause for those young people. It's really amazing to hear from their voices those race cards in such profound notes. So my name is Tanya Mosley, and again, welcome. We'll now hear from a few people who for years have advocated for the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who we honor today. They are keynote speakers from past celebrations, and I invite them now to share their race card with you. We start with Carver Gayton.
An illusionary rationale to subjugate.
Mona Jones.
Choices: demonstrate, tolerate, educate, negotiate, assimilate.
Nate Miles.
Seahawks 21, 49ers 10. Oh! Oh, wrong group. Wrong group. Sorry, Reverend Mckinney. We must continue the work every day.
Thank you. Now, see, I was going to acknowledge the Seahawks fever. You did for me, so I see a lot of it here, by the way. Well, thanks to all of you for your 6 words with your extensive work on social justice and equal rights. There was a great experience behind them, and we are honored that you chose to share them with us today. Now, thanks to Roger Pegues for the musical interlude. I know many of you heard him right as the doors opened at 11 o'clock. Roger has been a musician since his student days at Cornish, and he was inspired by his career by Phyllis Birdwell, a longtime minister of music here at Mount Zion. And can we have a round of applause as well for Danelle, Damon, and the Greater Works Corral? No surprise to anyone that they're a local group winning regional awards and competing on the national stage, and we're so excited to have them perform for us today. And thank you again for being here. This is a great crowd and a tremendous testament to Seattle's stand for Dr. Martin Luther King's life and legacy. Seattle Community Colleges has produced this great event for our city for 4 decades, honoring a great man and his dream. The colleges, Seattle Central, North Seattle, South Seattle, Seattle Vocational Institute, do their work with the belief that we all benefit from the lifetime of opportunity, and our individual successes is made greater by the success of those around us. This philosophy is very much in line with Dr. King's vision of social justice and equality. Now, one constant for those 4 decades has been Reverend Samuel B. Mckinney, who was pastor here at this church and keynote speaker for that first year at First Christian Church of Seattle. We'd like to thank Mount Zion Baptist Church for hosting this celebration for the past 31 years. Mount Zion has a long history of being a community gathering place for important civic and cultural events, including a personal visit from Dr. King himself at the request of Reverend Mckinney during the height of the civil rights movement. Our community is rich with people who were involved in that movement, and today we are joined by people who represent a variety of organizations that continue the work. Please hold your applause while I acknowledge them. The National Board of the NAACP, El Centro de la Raza, Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, Seattle Office for Civil Rights, University of Washington Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity, Washington State Association of Black Professionals in Healthcare, Washington State Commission on African American Affairs, the Washington State Labor Council, the Workforce Development Council. We also have with us today Interim Police Chief Harry Bailey, Captain Mike Edwards for the East Precinct, and members of the Seattle Police Department command staff and public safety officers, Seattle Fire Chief Gregory Dean, and members of the Seattle Fire Department, King County Sheriff's Office Deputy Ann Kilpatrick, and deputies of the Sheriff's Office. Thanks to each and every one of you for doing all that you do in keeping our community safe, just, and strong. So now I'd like to turn your attention to the cards you received when you arrived. You'll hear much more about them later from our honored guests, and I'll give you a brief history now. The Race Card Project is a national conversation started 3 years ago by our keynote speaker, Michele Norris. Participants share their thoughts, experiences, and observations about race in one sentence with only 6 words. People across the country and around the world read these candid views and comment as they wish. Now, as you can imagine, there's been some lively discussions online, each one providing the opportunity to reflect our collective experiences and walk a few steps in each other's shoes. Now, here's my 6 words. We are different, and that's okay. I think that's 5 words, yeah. But that statement is very important to me because I think many times when we're talking about equality, we often like to say, we're all the same. We just have a different color, or we may be from a different place, but we're all the same. The truth is that in many instances, we are not the same, but that is okay as long as I respect you and you respect me. That is what matters. And so those are my 6 words. So I hope you had the time to complete that card today and submit your 6 words online. So we'll hear more throughout the program. I'd like to invite Congressman Jim McDermott to the stage to share his. And he's not here at this moment, so we will move along from that, but he should be here shortly. So we'll now go with Congressman Smith.
Thank you. It's great to be here as always. My 6 words are, we are more alike than different, and I think that was an essential part of Martin Luther King's message. While we have incredible diversity, we also have to remember that within that diversity, we have the same interests, the same wants and needs when you come right down to it. I've traveled all over the world. I was just in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, very, very poor part of Central Africa, and couldn't possibly be more different than here in Seattle when you look at it. But you still saw people who cared about the health care of their children, who cared about the education of their children, who cared about whether or not they were going to be able to make it through the day and provide for their families and have a decent living. The same basic needs and concerns that every human being that I've encountered, from the 150 some odd different languages that are spoken in my district to the places I've been all over the world, Afghanistan and Iraq and elsewhere, that commonality is what holds us together. And to me, that is what Martin Luther King spoke to. Focus on bringing us together, not tearing us apart. And that was what I got out of it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Adam Smith. He represents our state's 9th Congressional District, and he's here from Washington, D.C. Governor Jay Inslee couldn't be with us today, but I do have a message from him. He says, I am pleased to extend warm greetings to all of those attending the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Community Celebration sponsored by the Seattle Community Colleges. Today we celebrate an extraordinary life and legacy that continues to challenge and inspire our nation. Dr. King's words pierced the very hearts of his listeners and birthed a new hope for equality, equity, and spirit of brotherhood that transcends the color of one's skin. Now, nearly 46 years after his death, his vision for a united America continues to call us to action, and the dream he so eloquently articulated on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial lives on, captivating the hearts and minds of a new generation of young people. Diversity is one of our state's greatest strengths, and I am thankful that Washington is home to individuals who are committed to social progress and change. I hope that as you honor Dr. King's memory today, you will be reminded of the powerful impact that citizens of vision and action can have on their community and even their nation and beyond. I can think of no better way to honor Dr. King's memory than to carry on the values and work that so defined his life. Please accept my best wishes for a meaningful time of reflection and fellowship. Very truly yours, Jay Inslee. And now I have the pleasure of introducing to you our new mayor, our newly elected mayor, Mayor Ed Murray, who served in the Washington State Senate representing the 43rd District for 6 years, and before that, 11 years in the House of Representatives. Congratulations and welcome, Mayor.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. My 6 words are history, future, despair, hope, oppression, opportunity. What those words mean to me, I think of the poem that Maya Angelou, the poet, read at Bill Clinton's inauguration in 1992. And she said in that poem that history, despite its wrenching pain, need not be lived again. And those words I put side by side. They need not be lived again, the history, the despair, the oppression, because of what a generation of people were willing to do who are here today, and what we can do to make it hope and opportunity in a very different future. I look forward to working with you on the next chapter of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Murray. We'd like to acknowledge our elected officials in the audience today. Well, one of 2 of you may have slipped in, so I apologize if I don't have your name here, but can you stand as I name you? Washington State Senator Adam Klein, and members of the Seattle City Council, including Tim Burgess, Sally Clark, Jean Gotten, Bruce Harrell, Tom Rasmussen, and Quashma Sawant. We'd also like to welcome representatives from the offices of Senator Maria Cantwell and King County Executive Dow Constantine. Okay, so it is my honor now to introduce you to the Reverend Aaron Williams, senior pastor at Mount Zion Baptist Church. As I mentioned earlier, Mount Zion hosted this program for 31 years. Reverend, I know I speak from everyone when I say thank you for your positive and warm welcome into your church for all of these years.
Well, first thing I want to say is never ask a Baptist preacher to share something in 6 words. That's a very difficult task. But nevertheless, first of all, I want to welcome all of you here. We're glad to have you here and glad to have worked with Seattle Community Colleges for 31 years, and we want to continue that relationship in the future. I've been asked to share my race card in 6 words. Let me just share the 6 words, but only explain 2. Separate, twice, anger, peace, justice, and love. Let me focus on the word anger. When I was 9, 10 years old, I used to work with my grandfather, and he had a landscaping business, and we worked for a white gentleman named Mr. Logue. And one day, my grandfather, at the end of the day, he would always go to Mr. Logue and tell him that we were finished for today. But I noticed on that particular day that he never looked at Mr. Logue in the eye. And it didn't dawn on me until later that he was raised not to look a white man in the eye. And that angered me. And I thought about that for many years, and it has always been my determination to always look every man in the eye, no matter who they are, whether they're black or white, yellow or green, but to always look them straight in the eye. I was introduced to the writings of Dr. King, and he countered that anger with peace, with justice, and with love, and to become an agent of peace, an agent of justice, and an agent of love. Thank you.
Seattle Central Community College opened its doors in 1966, 1 year after the Voting Rights Act that was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. In the same year, Dr. King led the 200-mile, I need some water, right? The 220-mile March Against Fear from Memphis, Tennessee to Jackson, Mississippi. For many people, some of you here now, that march seemed like it happened just yesterday. The State Community College Act was passed in 1967, and by 1970, Central was joined by North Seattle and South Seattle community colleges, and all three opened its doors to students as a district. 20 years later, Seattle Vocational Institute opened. Over the years, nearly 2 million people have been educated and trained at the colleges. The help they get and the work they have there gets people back to work, offering businesses a highly skilled workforce. Community colleges are a pathway to higher education from high school and to universities. They help lift up individuals and communities, offering everyone a chance at a better life. An attainable education provides the pathway to success for students and generations that follow them. It is my pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of Seattle Community Colleges, Jill Wakefield.
Thank you, Tanya. We are so privileged to have Tanya Mosley as our MC today. She is a remarkable reporter with a wide range of credits. You may have seen her or heard her on King 5 as a correspondent for Al Jazeera Media Network or a reporter at KUOW Public Radio. If you heard any of her recent Black in Seattle series on KUOW, you know how much she cares about this city and our residents. She's the perfect match for this special community event. I want to give special thanks and recognition to our leaders from the Seattle Community Colleges who are with us today. We have Gary Ortley, President at South Seattle Community College, Mary Ellen O'Keefe, Interim President at North Seattle Community College, Paul Kilpatrick, President at Seattle Central, and Al Griswold, who leads Seattle Vocational Institute. We have other Seattle Community College administrators who are located in the front rows and who are volunteering throughout the church today. I want you to know that each one of these administrators dedicates their lives to the success of every student who attends our colleges. I also want to recognize Dr. Mildred Olay, former president of Seattle Central Community College and my colleague at South Seattle, and Dr. Charles Mitchell, my predecessor as Chancellor. Not only my predecessor, mentor for many of us here in the room, and long-term president of Seattle Central Community College when it was honored by Time Magazine as College of the Year. Thank you, Charles. It's my pleasure now to introduce my bosses, the trustees for the Seattle Community Colleges. They have agreed to share their race cards. So I'd like to begin with Board Chair Albert Shin.
This is for all my Asian American brothers out there. Asian American men are sexy leaders.
I don't know what to say. How about I introduce our Vice Chair, Courtney Gregoire.
Chair Shen took mine. Realize daughter's view of a colorblind world.
And Board Member Carmen Gayton.
Thank you. Well, Nate Miles took mine, but I'll give my own. Negative stereotypes and untruths threatens humanity.
And finally, our most recent active board member emeritus who has never missed one of these events, Tom Malone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, first, thank you for the honor of being able to join my former colleagues. I really missed the regular participation in all of the community college activities, so I'm really delighted to be back here. I gave a fair amount of thought, a surprising amount of thought, trying to think of something that would be appropriate. And I thought, for all the years, if I could have one thing, it would be a healthy society, not a fair society, a good society, but really a healthy society. So that's 3 words, right? So I was left with 3. And that isn't much. So I had to give a lot of thought to 3 words. And then I was driving down here today, and I was listening to the Tavis Smiley Show. That's a radio show on KUOW. And it was a really fascinating interview. It turns out that Tavis today was talking about Seattle, and he was interviewing someone. Her name was Tanya Mosley. And Tanya was absolutely eloquent in talking about the difficulties that black people have living in Seattle, this great, wonderful city that we all love, this great, welcoming, open, diverse city that we all prize so highly, and the culture that we love so much. And it turns out that people suffer in the city. So I had 3 words, and in deference to Tanya, I changed the first one. So the first word that I would think of for a healthy society is understanding, and then fairness, and then opportunity. So understanding, fairness, and opportunity, a healthy society.
Thank you. We are well served by our Board of Trustees. Can we level the playing field? That's what my race card says. Those are the 6 words and the question I contribute to today's conversation. The workforce of the future must be diverse, highly skilled, nimble, and collaborative, and most importantly, reflect our community. Can we level the playing field? Many of us here today, educators, elected officials, community activists, have dedicated our lives to creating opportunities for all of our residents, because we know that everyone benefits when everyone has a lifetime of opportunity. We're making progress. At the Seattle Community Colleges, we've expanded into new careers from aviation and maritime to nanotechnology and sustainability. And we're creating a regional healthcare training center at Pacific Tower, the Amazon building, that offers pathways from CNAs and medical assistants to surgical technologists, respiratory therapists, and bachelor's degrees in allied health and nursing. We're also giving students the opportunity to earn baccalaureate degrees on our campus in hospitality, behavior science, international business, teacher education, and sustainable building. But more importantly, on every one of our campuses, we have developed programs to get every student to the finish line. Why? Because we know that college completion in the 21st century is the gateway to the middle class, family wage jobs, lower unemployment, and increased civic engagement. College completion levels the playing field. So there's still work to do. The field is far from level. Right now in our country, in our city, the opportunity gap is wider than ever. And it's never been more challenging to afford to attend college, to balance classes and homework with jobs and family responsibilities. We have fine programs and outstanding faculty. Together, we're working together to make education affordable, accessible, and achievable to everyone with a dream of a better life. I'm especially glad today that this community gathering includes students from our 3 colleges, the Seattle Vocational Institute, Franklin High School, Stanford International School, and the YWCA Girls First program. We're so glad you're here. You're what we're about. Let's welcome. have presidents and leaders from other colleges. Joining us today, we welcome Antioch's President Brian Baird, Bellevue College President David Rule, and Shoreline's President Darrell Campbell, who are all with us. It's together that we will create brighter futures. The new American dream starts here for all of us and for every person every day at the Seattle colleges. Yes, it's time to give every student a chance at the best education, the best career, and the best future. Can we level the playing field? Yes, we can. I'd like to invite Seattle Central President Paul Kilpatrick to the stage to present the Reverend Samuel Mckinney Scholarship. Our recipient is an inspiring example of someone who has a yes, we can attitude.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Wakefield. I had to check with the pastor to make sure I could use the center mic, because you got to be close to God to do that kind of stuff. My race card reads, planting seeds for the next generation. For me, I've been in education for close to 40 years, and to me, when you get involved with the field of education, you are planting seeds for the future. You are working with the next generation. You are working with the people who are going to be in a position to make changes in the world. So for me, that's always been very fulfilling to plant seeds for the next generation. I'm sure for a lot of educators, they feel the same way. Scholarships are some of the seeds that allow future generations to further their studies. One that we hold dear to this celebration is the Reverend Samuel Mckinney Scholarship, established to recognize the many contributions of Reverend Mckinney, a civic leader and a longtime pastor here at Mount Zion. This scholarship was awarded for the first time in 1999, the year of Reverend Mckinney's retirement from the pulpit. I understand he was practicing civil rights before Seattle knew what civil rights were, planting seeds for the next generation and the next and the latest. Represented by the fifth graders from John Stanford International School. Give them some acknowledgement, please. These are the seeds that we're planting for the future. And Tyrone, would you join me, please? The scholarship rotates among the 3 Seattle community colleges, and it is funded by the college's foundations. This year, we welcome Tyrone Lee from Seattle Central to the list of scholarship recipients. Tyrone is a 34-year-old single dad who was born and raised in Seattle Central's area. His mother is with him today. Could we have acknowledgement to her if she would please stand? Tyrone was instrumental and very successful in turning his life around. He is a former gang member, recovering alcoholic, who's now been clean and sober for nearly 10 years and successfully moving forward. He has already earned an associate degree in social and human services, a chemical dependency specialist certificate, and is now working towards a bachelor's degree in applied behavioral science with a 3.5 GPA at Seattle Central. Tyrone is currently a case manager at the Matt Talbot Center. Tyrone aspires to work with youth who have reoccurring disorders. One thing that's always been a certainty is that we need more role models. We need role models to convince other students, people, that they can change their lives. I see Tyrone as being that kind of role model that we need. Tyrone's wish for his work is to take his own experiences and give back to Seattle youth. He is a Little League coach in Everett and has coached football and basketball for the last 7 years. He enjoys helping kids excel and encourages their parents to become more involved. We are proud to have Tyrone represent Seattle Central Community College and congratulate him on his achievements.
I just want another round of applause for Tyrone. And I see tears of joy from his mom, and I can only imagine how proud you are of your son and how far he's come. From mother to mother, I understand that, and I applaud you as well.
Hallelujah!
And I'm supposed to speak after that. No, like seriously, I think I want to go run some laps around the church. That was amazing. And there's a little boy asleep right there, right by. He's still asleep too. I can't believe that. Amazing. Whew, okay. So I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about the Black in Seattle series very briefly, and so I will. So as many of you know, it's a 4-part series that aired on KUOW. And I think above all, what I learned from producing that series is that people were very eager to have the discussion, and it gave them permission to have discussions about race that maybe they always wanted to have, but they never felt like they could. And so with that, I'm very proud for that. I know I just scratched the surface of what it means to be Black in Seattle, and it was a slice of my life and just a small part of it. I think what I really love the most as well is what Mr. Malone said when he said understanding. It gave many people an understanding of maybe what life is like for Black people like myself. With that, I think the Race Card Project is such a wonderful project in that it does give us the chance to have the discussion and think about ideas and thoughts that we may have around race and stream of consciousness. What comes to mind when you first think of those first 6 words? Michele Norris is an award-winning journalist with more than 2 decades of experience. She is currently the host and special correspondent for NPR. Previously, Norris co-hosted NPR's news magazine All Things Considered, public radio's longest-running national program with Robert Siegel and Melissa Block. Norris began hosting the program in December 2002 and stepped away from her All Things Considered duties during the 2012 presidential campaign. While on sabbatical, Norris spent time traveling the country and developing 2 successful initiatives, the Race Card Project and NPR's Backseat Book Club. Her new role will allow her to continue her work while producing this in-depth segment for NPR programs. Michele Norris has a voice that is undeniably recognizable and embodies both authority and calm. She is captivating and astute on air. Norris has presented leading news, weighing in on American culture, including race and influence of new media, since she joined NPR in 2002. Since September 2010, Norris published her first book, The Grace of Silence, a memoir. The book focuses on how America talks about race in the wake of the Obama presidency and how her own complex legacy has shaped her dedication to informing others through sound and voice. Compelling, thoughtful, and insightful, Norris's personality is hard to match. Please join me in giving Mrs. Norris a warm welcome. Welcome, Michele Norris.
Pastor Williams, thank you for allowing me to stand at your pulpit. Now, the calendar says Friday, but my ears say Sunday. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here with me today. There's something going on down the road, so I know that a lot of you could be down there celebrating the Seahawks also. And with that in mind, someone told me that I'm not supposed to wear this because it's too close, so I'm just going to take it off. I know where I am. Oh, and my glasses, my readers, I guess, are my nod to the Seahawks. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Mount Zion Baptist Church, to all the elected officials that are here today, public servants. Thank you to the Seattle colleges for bringing me to town and for hosting this wonderful event year after year, and for your partnership with the Race Card Project. What you have brought to this project has deepened the experience for me and has brought so much to the project that will deepen the experience for those who dip into the well and who visit the site and take some time with it. I'm going to talk about 6 words in just a minute, but there are 3 words that come to me when I think about honoring Dr. King, particularly when I listen to all that's been said earlier, those who've shared their 6 words, and to the wonderful, the beautiful music that we've heard today. It sounds a little bit like a slogan, love wins. Love always wins. You start to see that in bumper stickers now. I don't know if you've seen that. They're very popular on the East Coast because after the Newtown shooting, it was something that parents were able to hold on to. The notion that love wins. Okay, that's only 2 words, so I'm going to do exactly what you did. I'm going to try to build it up to 6. Love wins, love always wins. Well, that only gets me to 5. So if I can use punctuation, I guess, as my 6th mark, love wins, love always wins, exclamation point. A bullet took Dr. King's life, but it did not extinguish his spirit. It did not erase his to-do list. That was left for us to examine and to embrace, and it didn't silence the voices that still need to be lifted so that we can find the right path forward. And in some ways, that's what I've tried to do with this crazy thing called the Race Card Project. It's odd that I find myself here for a couple of reasons. One is I've been in journalism for a long time. A couple decades now, actually more than a couple decades. And I have to tell you that for a long time as a journalist of color, I ran away from conversations about race. I did not want to be the reporter who always had to do the stories about race, who was always sent to a particular community when they needed someone to go to Anacostia or wherever it was. I was very busy in the month of February. And I resented that. I mean, you know, in part, February is the shortest month. But in Black History Month, my phone would ring, editors would approach me, and after I'd been in journalism long enough, I could say, you know, if I haven't seen you the other 11 months of the year, I think it's going to be a difficult conversation for us. This is not just something that I want to talk about in the month of February. I wanted to have a full docket as a journalist. I wanted to cover financial issues. I wanted to cover foreign policy. I wanted to cover politics. I didn't want to be the reporter who was always focusing on race. Now I am the reporter whose principal docket is about race, how we think about race and how we talk about race. Life works in funny ways. I couldn't be happier, though. It has been a rich and rewarding experience. It happened by accident, but I'm so glad that it did happen because it has allowed me to understand this wonderful country that we live in a deeper way, and then to share that with other people. I began the Race Card Project really in an act of desperation. As Tanya said, and Tanya, thank you for your work. Did you plan this to be on the radio on the way here? Because I would bet half the audience was listening to you while we were coming here. Yeah. Thank you, and I hope that will continue because I feel like there's so much more work to be done. And every conversation, it seems like there's another avenue that needs to be explored. When I wrote my family memoir in 2010, I knew at that point that I would be engaging in conversations about race when I went out to talk about it. And I came here to Elliott Bay Books. I traveled around the country, and I knew when I sat down with people, I would be having this conversation about race. And I always thought that no one wanted to talk about race. That's been my experience. Usually when you start to bring up the subject of race, people get that body language. You know what I'm talking about? They cross their legs and they cross their arms, and it's just like, oh my goodness, can this just be over? And if I was in a newsroom or someplace, and if I ever brought up race, or if anyone ever brought up race, people would look at their watches. Oh, look at the time. It's time to break for lunch. So I figured that no one wanted to have this conversation. I knew that if I was going to talk about the story that I wrote, which was about my family's very complex and often surprising racial legacy, things that I uncovered that I never knew about, that I had to have some vehicle so that people would lean in instead of leaning out. I wanted to invite people into the conversation. And so literally on a Saturday afternoon, I came up with this idea of these cards, quite literally playing the race card. And I took the phrase and I turned it on its head because I've never liked the term race card. Usually when people accuse you of playing the race card, it's an accusatory finger. It's a way of saying, I don't like what you're saying, and please stop saying it. So I try to take that phrase and turn it on its head and instead use it to stoke a conversation, to invite people into the conversation. So I went to my local Kinko's and I printed up 200 race cards. And they said, they look very much like the ones you have now. They haven't evolved much. Your story, 6 words, please send. And I asked people to think about the word race and think about all the things that come to your mind, your triumphs, your laments, your observations, your experiences. But there were rules. You had to take all that and then condense it to one sentence that only had 6 words. I printed up about 200 of them. My family thought I was crazy. I'm the daughter of postal workers, so my mother thought I should be selling them instead of giving them away, but she was happy that I was doing my part to support the Postal Service. My husband thought, well, wait, they're all going to come. What are we going to do with them when they come back? And I said, it's only 200. Well, all these years later, it's now thousands and thousands of them that have come back. But when I first started distributing them, they came back right away. People actually filled out the cards and sent them in. And so I kept distributing them, and I kept distributing them. And it became what you see now, this wonderful archive of experiences. I did it in part because I was trying to figure out how to invite people into a conversation that you knew was going to be difficult. Because our history of race in America is not without difficulty, and I know I use double negatives there, but you know it's a difficult history. Whether you're talking about the national history or whether you're talking about individual history, and I learned that firsthand. When I set out to write the book that I wrote, that's another example of how life takes you in a different direction. I originally wanted to write a book about how Americans talk and think about race, and my idea was to write a book about other people. I had spent much of the 2008 campaign on the campaign trail, and despite this word post-racial that I kept hearing everywhere, I thought something else was happening. In fact, post-racial was always curious to me because I never even knew what it meant. I mean, may I approach the congregation? Can anyone out here tell me what you think post-racial means all these years later? Anyone can define it? Well, that tells you something. But that word was everywhere. And, wait, one more time? Reconciliation between races. Well, that may have been one definition of it, but often when it was used, it was talked about as if we were taking the express elevator to the top floor, where we could just move past all the difficult stuff and just get up top where the view was great. And we wouldn't have to talk about race anymore. And when I was traveling around the country, what I realized is that there was this really interesting and really animated conversation about race, and I wanted to capture that. When I sat down to begin work on the book, what happened was when I was trying to listen to people and how they talked about race and traveling the country, something really interesting started to happen very close to home. The elders in my family suddenly entered this period of disinhibition. It was almost like historic indigestion. All of these stories started to just bubble up to the surface. And I have to tell you that I have a family that that runs the gamut politically. So I have very conservative members of my family that are very politically conservative and religiously conservative, and they don't necessarily agree with, a lot of this was stirred by the election in 2008, which was historic in lots of ways, as you remember. And they don't necessarily agree with Barack Obama. In fact, if they got him in a room and sat him down, it might be a difficult conversation for him. Yet, when they picked up a newspaper and saw a picture of a man of color sitting behind a great big desk in the Oval Office, something inside them shifted. And for the members of my family who were enthusiastic about that election, something inside them shifted when they walked into an election booth and filled out with a number 2 pencil that little circle. Something in them shifted. And whatever happened, when we got to the dinner table, it was like pass the peas, and let me tell you about what happened in 1957. Suddenly, all these stories started coming to the surface. And I realized that as the journalist in the family, the person who was supposed to be chronicling the stories of the family, there were all these things that I didn't know because they saw so much and they said so little. If you will allow me It's easier for me to explain this to you if I can just read from a portion of the intro to the book. You see, I've always known that my racial identity has largely been forged by the sum of experiences in my lifetime, and my most formative memories flow through my parents' lives. From their struggles and tribulations, their triumphs and celebrations, their dignity found through a hard day's work, the devotion of our worship, the places we lived, and above all, the constant expectation captured by one word: rise. Rise and shine, rise to the occasion, rise above it all, no matter what, move forward, never backward, always onward and upward, and if you ever feel like you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on until you can start climbing again. For all of our lives, we were told, keep your eye on the prize, stay strong, keep committed, focus on the fight for justice and equality. Set your sights on excellence and opportunity. Don't let up, don't look back, don't slow down. Ignore the slights. Excuse me. You know, I worked on this, and it still is hard sometimes, too. Ignore the slights and the slurs and the laws that try to keep you from achieving your goals. Always keep the prize in mind. See it, smell it, feel it. Our parents armed us with what they thought we needed: strength, courage, and a touch of indignation, but just a touch. I was shaped by the advice and admonitions that rained down on me. I have always known that. What I did not know until I began this project is that I was also shaped by the weight of my parents' silence. I originally wanted to write about how other people talked about race, but that presumption was swiftly disabused when I learned about secrets in my own family that had purposely been kept from me. Among those secrets was this. As a young man, my father had been shot by a white policeman. He never spoke about that incident after leaving Birmingham, Alabama, and moving north. He never told even my mother. He took the story to his grave. But my mother, she too was hiding something. My mother never talked about the time her mother spent traveling as an Aunt Jemima, swooping through small Midwestern towns to perform pancake-making demonstrations for farm women. The memory had caused her shame, so she'd locked it away. These revelations suggest to me that in certain ways I've never had a full understanding of my parents or the formation of my own racial identity. So you see, when I went out in the world to talk about that book, I knew that I would be engaging in rather difficult conversations, and I wanted to figure out how to pull people in. But I realized that as difficult as the discoveries I made in the book were, I was enriched by the discoveries. The work I told you about that my grandmother did. I understood why my mother never wanted to talk about that. Now, how many of you use Aunt Jemima pancake mix? And there's no shame in this. It's in my cupboard today. My son happens to like it. He likes the pancake syrup because it looks like she has her hand on her hip. So if you have this in your cupboard today, you know what Aunt Jemima looks like today, right? She looks like she shops at Macy's or Nordstrom. She has pearl earrings. She looks like she gets her hair done every Tuesday. Nice little wet set, takes her 45 minutes in and out. She plays canasta. She has a little Peter Pan collar. My grandmother was doing this work in the mid-1940s and the early 1950s. Aunt Jemima did not look like that then. The Aunt Jemima that was on the pancake box at that time looked like a slave woman. My mother didn't want to talk about this, and it's a hard thing when you want to get information and your mother tells you, talk about that when I'm gone. And yet I wanted to know more. The story didn't comport for me because the woman that I remember, my grandmother's name was Ione Brown, and she was a committee woman, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Committee woman, they run things. You give them a clipboard, and they're transformed. That was my grandmother. She got things done. I mean, if you walked in the basement and she was organizing things, if she told you to stack the chairs, you just, yes, ma'am, I'll stack the chairs. And she was a woman who was very particular in the way she dressed. And so as a child, I thought she always looked like she had an adult version of Garanimals on because her clothing was always completely matching from head to toe. So if it was a lavender day, everything was lavender. Her suit was lavender, her brooch was lavender, her jewelry was lavender. She would have a scarf attached to her pocketbook, which was short and compact, and that was lavender too. And when I discovered this, I had to think about my grandmother in a different way, not as the church woman that I remembered. I had to think about her, not with a scarf attached Jackie O style to her bag. I had to think about her dressing up as Aunt Jemima, the Aunt Jemima that looked like a slave woman. I had to think about her taking that scarf and pulling it, not tying it under her chin so she looked like Babe Paley, but taking it back here and tying it up front. Now, we know that scarf wasn't silk, right? You probably wouldn't even call it a scarf. You might call it a kerchief, a do-rag. I had to imagine this proud woman, what kind of hard bargain she made with herself when she sat down in front of a mirror and stepped into that hoop skirt. And because I'm a journalist, I knew how to dig, and I got lucky. And I found all kinds of information about the traveling Aunt Jemimas. There were a whole army of them, including several in Washington State. I found articles about my grandmother that mentioned her by name. Swooping into small towns, she had a 6-state region. I grew up in Minnesota. She had Minnesota, the Dakotas, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan. And when she rolled into these towns, she was treated like a celebrity. She would be at Kiwanis clubs, she would show at the local grocery store, Knights of Columbus, things like this. And under the headline, Aunt Jemima's coming to town, she described her work. And when she described her work, she said that she would focus on young children because she knew that in these small towns, they'd probably never seen a woman of color, and she wanted them to have a good impression. She would sing church songs because she was a woman of God, and she would speak in a very particular way because she wanted people to know she was educated. And that, something shifted in me when I read that, because my grandmother had always won oratory contests. If you spent more than 15 minutes with her, it would work its way into the conversation. And she had a very particular way of speaking. And when we were young kids in the 1970s in Minneapolis, Minnesota, thinking we were hip and urban in Minnesota, and we would be gathered at her house on Saturday morning. I had a lot of cousins, and we'd be gathered there and ironically having pancakes, and we would be talking about, in our hip, urban, Biafroed way, how we were fixing to do something or thinking about doing something. It used to drive my grandmother crazy. And she would say, "Excuse me, this is Minnesota, and Mr. G is standing outside the door. He's very cold. Perhaps you want to invite him inside the room so he can attach himself to the rest of your word." So you can talk about how you are thinking about doing something. Her diction was very precise, particularly when she was upset. And so when I read that she would do these pancake demonstrations, speaking in some version of the King's English, that rang true to me, because most of the women I now know were given a manual and they were told to speak in a form of slave patois. And she refused to do that. Now, as much as my mother didn't want to explore that work, I was able to take that back and give that back to the family. And a difficult memory became something that we could get our arms around a little bit easier. There's no shame in what she did. She took a job that could have been demeaning and lifted herself up and lifted her people up. It was the stage that was available to her. She made great money, I discovered. These traveling Aunt Jemimas made, what do they call it, kids? Long coin, big coin? They made good money, and it explained the suits. It also explained the little envelope she was able to give all of us when we went off to college. There's no shame in that. In fact, there's great value in that, not just in the paycheck that she earned, but in the wealth we have in the stories that we're able to pass on. And we only have those stories because we were able to lean in now as a family and look back at something that might be difficult. And that's really what we do in conversations about race. We know they might be difficult. It is a subject that can be very prickly. But if we're willing to lean in, we can be greatly enriched by that experience. And that's what I have tried to do with the Race Card Project, to provide a forum for people to speak their truths. I never knew how much people could pack into just 6 words. We've seen that today. I never expected that so many people would share their stories. I never expected that a magnificent city like Seattle would embrace a project like this and use it to further the discussion. I am so honored to be a part of this MLK celebration and to be a part in some way of the effort to lift this conversation up and to help us all better understand each other. You heard a wonderful rendering of what the six-word conversation can sound like from the race card readers. Earlier, you did a great job. From individuals, I'm just going to share a little bit more with you from what I have dipped into the mailbox, the inbox. And it was suggested to me by, I don't know if you know the artist and actress Anna Davier Smith. She has done, she's a wonderful monologuist. She's done The Fires Next Time, Fire in the Mirrors. If you watch the TV show Nurse Jackie, she plays the hospital administrator you hope you never run into. She also played the Secretary of State in the TV show West Wing. She has a great ear for dialogue. And she said, you know, when you take these six-word expressions, it sounds like people are actually talking to each other. It's the conversation you know is out there, but that you usually don't get a chance to hear. Take them, throw them together, and when you read them aloud, it sounds like some version of what Walt Whitman might have been talking about. That conversation about race sounds a little bit like what you heard. It sounds like this. Race doesn't exist by itself. Today's soft segregation harms everyone. Soul has no color. Black wears me wherever I go. I admit to unconscious racial bias. Does not define who I am, who I am not. Sometimes racism is self-imposed, still working harder than others are. The point of it all, power. Get your feet off our necks. Blacks complain constantly despite obvious progress, but I voted for Barack Obama. Colors run together, why can't people? I hear my grandfather's hateful words. Racism I inherited breaks my heart. Black kid in my math class? This from an 8-year-old. Think Dr. Seuss and the Sneetches. Born in America, I am American. Sometimes you see people's thought process. He wrote race to the border, and then he crossed that out, and instead it was no, make that race is the border. You can't say that anymore, Grandma. Pay no attention to my packaging. Black children cost less to adopt. I am still not from Vietnam. Please stop saying I am articulate. Do articulate whites also impress you? Ask who I am, not what. Where are you really from? I assume black women hate me. Easy to assume I'm guilty. My great-great-grandfather owned slaves. Would Martin Luther King support gay rights? Reason I ended a sweet relationship, a terrible unnecessary barrier against love. I will not ruin your bloodline. Korean marries Italian in Chinese garden, and they wrote in small letters, the food was great. Obama is mixed, black and white. The hybrid shall inherit the earth. My son is not half, he's double. A child knows when injustice exists. Someone said it all goes downhill after these 6 words. I'm not a racist, but every now and then I remember grandparents passed, new tree, no roots, just a German, never a Nazi. My grandfather would hate my children. My natural hair isn't a statement. There's nothing wrong with my hair. Got tired of straightening my hair. Ooh, can I touch your hair? I get a lot about hair. Red hair gets the most stares. Where'd your baby get red hair? Still the elephant in the room. Civility heals wounds from the past. What a tangled web we wove. I feel guilty for my privilege. Rebecca, black maid, taught me love. Didn't sound Chinese on the phone. Really, but you don't look Mexican. I thought you would be taller. You're Jewish, you don't look Jewish. The complicated, cruel history of man. Progressives always gloss over the truth. Conservatives distort truth to promote agenda. Spoke truth, burned at the stake. White, whatever I do is wrong. He said they always get away. Angry black men are so scary. Race doesn't scare me, clothes do. My mixed background means white enough. I was taught to fear others. Mugged by black teens, trust destroyed. Suit degree still afraid of me. Minority obsession and majority guilt trip. Stop exploiting to promote own agenda. We're just not understanding each other. Tonight, let's walk with our TV. I didn't understand that. So I contacted him, and he said, if you want to understand something about America, take a TV, tuck it under your arm, and walk through your neighborhood at dusk and see how far you get. I understood that. We don't match, yes, we're family. Sad I learned, sad and hopeful. What if the world were colorblind? Colorblindness is not goal. Celebrate colors. Let us all live sweetly together. Start with kids and mix well. Skin color is God's gift wrapping. Our untold stories keep us separate. Total non-issue when the aliens arrive. And of all the ones that have come in, I think this is my favorite. Underneath, we all taste like chicken. I spent a lot of time last year researching the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and spent a lot of time researching the words and the actions of your friend, Dr. King. And one of the things that I discovered about the March on Washington is there are many things that were significant about that march, but there's small things that get lost on us. The March on Washington was the first time for a lot of people that they actually stood next to a person who didn't look like them. Now, look in this room. Look to your left and look to your right, look behind you. The diversity in this room is something we take for granted. In August of 1963, to be standing on the National Mall next to someone of a different color was an earth-shattering experience. When they started singing and people spontaneously took someone else's hand, that meant taking the hand of someone of a different color. If I asked you all to hold hands right now, no big deal, no biggie. At the time, that was seismic. And that was just 50 years ago. One of the things that the foreign press noted about the March on Washington is its diversity. They looked at America and saw the tapestry of America, and in the foreign coverage, almost all of the newspapers noted that. When you look at foreign coverage today, it is something they still remark upon when they talk about America. Seattle has one of the most, I guess, the most diverse zip code in America is here in Seattle. Diversity is one of our hallmarks, and yet we often see it as a burden. This difficult thing for us that we have to get over. Maybe if we too saw it as a benefit instead of a burden, as something to lift up, it wouldn't be so difficult. And the last thing I will say is a message to the young people in the room. I'm so glad young people are here, because I think sometimes in talking about how difficult it is to talk about race, we do them a disservice. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. We say it's difficult to talk about race, and so it becomes difficult. So for their benefit, let's figure out how not to pass on that message so that they are able to march forward with courage and with confidence and to have these conversations without tears and without peril. Thank you very much. It's been a real honor to be with you today. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we promised you that when the subject is race, the inbox is always interesting, and we have some more people who are going to share their race cards with us. First, we're going to hear from Cleo Cochran, longtime supporter of the Seattle Community Colleges, whose late husband, George, held several positions within the district, including its president, and which is now known as the Chancellor. Cleo Cochran.
I'm Cleo Corcoran. My 6 words are, loving my neighbor requires equal justice. Love is an active verb. I may say I have the ethic of trying to love my neighbor without discrimination, But that doesn't mean anything if I don't act. I must act to promote equal justice and equal opportunity. And one of the ways that I do that personally is by contributing funds to scholarships at the Seattle Community Colleges. And that gives me great pleasure because I know I'm actually doing something to promote equal opportunity, but also because it honors the memory and the values of my beloved late husband, George Corcoran.
Cleo Corcoran, thank you very much. We're now going to hear from former trustee and retired legislator Phyllis Kenney.
Thank you. I'm very proud of who I am, Phyllis Gutierrez Kenney. Are you?
Al Sugiyama is the executive director of the Executive Development Institute, and we will hear from him next.
Thank you. Slightly modified my fifth word since I'm in the house of the Lord. Quiet Asians, Pacific Islanders, H, no.
Okay. I have it on good authority that you got to pass on that for today. Thank you. Sheila Edwards Lang is Lang. I'm sorry, I want to make sure I get it right. Is Vice President for Minority Affairs and Vice Provost for Diversity at the University of Washington Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity.
Thank you. My 6 words are social justice makes the dream real.
Thank you. We hear now from a member of the Seattle City Council, Bruce Harrell.
Thank you very much. My 6 words are, love wins. Love always wins. No, I heard that. I'm sorry. Politicians are copycats. No, here's my one. I'm so sorry. So, fear is the fuel for racism.
Thank you. Frank A. Blethen is the publisher and chief executive officer of the Seattle Times. The Blethen family founded the newspaper in 1896. So glad you're here today.
Thank you. Closing fault lines are a lifelong journey.
Thank you. Estela Ortega is the executive director of El Centro de la Raza.
Race, socially constructed for power and privilege.
Thank you. And John Vassal is the chief medical officer at Swedish Hospital.
Vassal, thank you, Michelle.
Oh, Vassal, did I say it wrong?
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you, and welcome to Seattle.
Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful words. Mine are achieved mainstream success without minority programs, quote unquote. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. My name is John Vassal. I'm the chief medical officer for Swedish Health Services, which is the largest hospital system in the state of Washington. I'm responsible for the quality and safety of the medical care delivered in all of our 5 hospitals, and I'm the chief doctor for a medical staff of about 3,000 physicians. A couple years ago, I was in conversation with a professor at the University of Washington, and we were talking about minority affairs programs. And he said, you know, the programs today are not the same as the programs that you were in your time. And I thought that was interesting because he didn't ask me if I was in any kind of program. But the assumption was, if you were a successful black person, you must have there must have been some hand up, you know, does that doubt whether you really earned it or whether or not it was given to you? Now, I have no problems with minority affairs programs. In fact, at one time I was the director of minority affairs for the medical school at the University of Washington, and I think for those who need them, it's very important. We should continue to do that, and we should give everyone an opportunity to succeed. However, I think at some point, those of us who have been successful, who are minorities, have faced that question: did you really earn it? You know, was there some handout, something that was given to you? So my hope is that the 6 words I'll be faced with is my success, your success, equally legitimate.
Thank you. Thank you. At the Race Card Project, we have created a special page for Seattle. So everyone who has read their 6 words, I hope that you will figure out how to get them to me so we can make sure that is on the wall. The conversation about race is variegated. It's different in different parts of the country, and what we've been able to do is capture that conversation in Seattle, and to get a sense of what it sounds like, you can go to that special page. We have dedicated that to the city. I'm going to close by sharing with you my 6 words. They change all the time. When I first did this, it was fooled them all, not done yet. I'm a kid who grew up with a speech impediment, so no one thought I would make my living in communications. But I settle on these 6 words all the time. Still more work to be done for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Michele Norris for speaking and also for bringing the Race Card Project to Seattle. And you will be able to fill out your race card and talk a little bit more about it downstairs after the program is over. Now stop by the Northwest African American Museum on Martin Luther King Day this Monday for an all-day open house where you can look through books about the civil rights movement, access speeches by Dr. King, and learn about others who carry the task of advocating for civil rights and social justice. And you can join us online with your race card and take part in the dialogue. The program SCCTV every Sunday and February 6th at 7 p.m. And also, as I said, after the program is over, head on downstairs and speak about your race card, and let's have a discussion with each other. And now let's continue the tradition of closing this celebration with song. Join Reverend Mckinney, Danelle, Damon, and the Greater Works Corral with We Shall Overcome. I think we're about to have church again. This is great. Thank you.
Somebody by the hand reach across the aisle. We are not a post-racial society. We have not overcome. We still have a long way to go. And so the song, We Shall Overcome, is still apropos. So let us join and lift our voices in singing, We shall overcome, and we will. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome today. Today. I do believe. We shall overcome. Today. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. Oh, we'll walk hand in hand. Today. Amen. You are dismissed.
Hallelujah.